What up, you fan Lebitardians? Welcome to the Fan Lebitard Show, episode 99.9 with guest Taylor Vipolis. Is it an honor to be a part of episode 99.9, Taylor?
Yeah, I was getting excited when you were about to number it that maybe I was 100, but it's I'm assuming the next closest that I could be to
So
the 100th
close.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
I, I
close.
I will I will take that with like a half badge of honor.
Well, glad you're excited. Welcome aboard the Fan Lebitard Show, the fastest growing Dan Lebitard Show fan YouTube channel. You're going to want to make sure you subscribe. Find us wherever you can get your podcasts as well. Leave us a 5-star review, all that jazz. Taylor, what do you do for the Lebitard Show?
Yeah, so I work as a video producer where I help pull any videos that the show needs in terms of the visual support, or if they start talking about a video in a segment, being able to
Mm.
pull that kind of video and make sure they're ready to play it. I also help out getting the show to max on a daily basis. I help get the show to DraftKings for their YouTube breakouts, and then I help produce original content and some things that um, people don't see behind the scenes. But I could kind of do it all, and I love working for the show, and anytime I get the chance to do some of the stuff with the guys or the girls that work on the show, it's an awesome experience.
Yeah, you kind of made a splash when you first arrived because if I'm correct in this, you were behind the Who Dat Is videos that
Yeah,
started on social media and have made their return. Will we be seeing
yeah.
another Who Dat Is video soon?
Yes. This week there's another one.
I know the first one that returned was Alperin Sengun. Has there been another one since then, or is it just that one so far?
Yeah, last week it was Corey Seager from
Corey
the Texas
Seager.
Rangers.
Okay, I saw that one too. I just forgot about that one, but I do remember the Alperin Sengun one. That was a good one. I actually was able to. I knew that guy because I made a YouTube short about him. So, and that name's just always stuck with me ever since. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions of that game too is that I know who all those people are. I don't. Like I didn't know Alperen Şengün. I kind of just went to the NBA scoring list, and I just kept going
Hmm.
down the names until I got to somebody where I was like, I don't think people would know that, and I think it is the reason why I thought it would be such a funny idea is that like it's the Dan Le Batard show is one of the biggest sports shows in America, and that there are even some people who can't be able to identify some people without um, the team name or just by looking at who they are. So I think it kind of fit into the space of being like, hey, these guys are funny, but they also can talk about sports. So that's kind of what I love to do for the show, and I don't really want to be somebody who's like front facing on the camera and talking. Um, I think I said it on Mystery Crate not too long ago. Like I much prefer to be like an ideas guy
Hmm.
and feed lines to people who can deliver them online, like a Stu Gatz or like Dan, because like when I first started watching the show, like that's like the version of the show that I fell in love with, where you could clearly see Billy on ESPN News whispering something, and then within a second Stu Gatz is saying something and the entire back room starts laughing. So that's kind of like what I do, and kind of like my ideal type role.
So, do you have a line that you've whispered that's gotten on the show that you feel proud of, or a joke, or do you not want to reveal
Yeah, I
behind
don't
the?
want to I don't want to I don't want to pull the curtain back too much, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So when Dan is saying like video team, get me this video, that's you? Because you said you're kind of the person who tracks down videos. That's you some of the times.
Yeah, it's me and Mike Fuentes.
You and Fuentes are tracking down those videos. Speaking of Fuentes, is that where the beef between you guys has started? Is tracking down these videos? There's,
Nah,
you know, what
they
is
they
give us some details
the
on this
backstory.
beef. Yeah, the
Yeah.
backstory on this here.
So the backstory on the beef, I think, is that where we both started around the same time. And Dan kind of has that narrative that everybody that's working there is trying to get their way on camera. And every time I'm on camera or every time Fuentes is on camera, I think he thinks that he should just be the one that's on camera. So anytime I am on camera, he's just waiting in the wings with a shiv ready to try to stab me in the back and kind of undercut me at every turn. So that's kind of where the beef started, and it's mostly on Mystery Crate because again, like I'm not sitting in on the show and he's not sitting in on the show, but there are times when they're about to record Mystery Crate and Billy's like, or Billy or Chris is like, hey Taylor, can you sit in here in the shipping container? Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of where the beef started. But again, it's like a rivalry where one team, like I'm a Carolina fan. Carolina beats NC State 95% of the time in basketball. NC State still wants to call it a rivalry. Sure, you could call it a rivalry, but when one team's the one that's winning a majority of the time, it's like you can't really call it that.
Yeah, good point. I mean, is everyone okay at Meadowlark? I mean, you have this beef between you and Fuentes. There was the whole Amin and Izzy dust up, which I've talked about at length. You got David Sampson in the merch store beefs and all that. You got people still stealing the fine bucket money. There's more palace intrigue at Meadowlark than on planet Arrakis with House Atreides and House Harkonnen. What is going on here?
I think it's kind of the family atmosphere that Dan has built where we do feel like a family and we're around each other so much that like families that you're gonna fight with those members, but at the end of the day, it is all love. And I think one of the best things that Dan kind of built with the show, and then when he left the show and left Meadowlark, and it's the one of the reasons why like I fell in love with the show is like they lean into when
When they
they
left
lean into the
ESPN, you're
mistakes.
saying?
Yeah, when they left ESPN and started Meadowlark, they lean into the mistakes, and that's something that I love. So like if Chris Cody messes up, or we hear Billy Gill or Mike Ryan mess up, it isn't really like, hey, let's cover it up. It's like if somebody from the outside room where like we kind of sit, if we hear that and nobody might have picked it up in the show, like it's almost like a Usain Bolt 40-yard dash to get to the shipping container and be like, hey, I don't know if you heard this, but Stu Gatz or Dan or Mike Ryan just had a bad miss up, and then we'll try to find where that clip was or where that audio was, just so we could kind of replay it and make that person kind of sit in that discomfort.
Yeah, I think absolutely as a fan, I'd agree that those are some of the best like moments. I mean, I think probably some of the times I've laughed the hardest is when they play like the Bomani sound of him like choking and help me and all that, like just gets me every single time. Like, I probably come back to that like every like once a year or something, and it still like cracks me up. But speaking of those awkward moments in the show, you've started to be a part of those, and I want to know, when you're on the boat, could you feel the segment with Ronnie Chang going sideways? What was that like for you being a part of that interview?
On the boat, it felt like there was a hole on the boat and I was trying to cover it up with my hands. And at some point I just realized, this is essentially a sinking ship. And that's why at one point when it starts to at one point I could tell it was already off the rails. So that's when I chimed into Dan, like I could ask a sports question. And then I even messed up the sports question asking I think I said, what do the Bills have to do to beat the Chiefs, even though the Chiefs had already beat the Bills that week and they were playing
Yeah.
the Ravens. And that was a situation where nobody caught that I said that was in the shipping container or on the show that day. Mike Fuentes heard it. He runs in to tell Billy or Chris Cody and then that's how it kind of got brought up that I even messed up that question to start.
Oh, I see. So again, Fuentes undermining you there. Will the Swift report continue? Is there I know the boat crashed, so that's probably not
A
something we're coming
liability issue,
back
yeah.
to. But is there another way that the Swift report may continue?
Yeah, there's been talks uh whether it's like on a treadmill in like a NASCAR, um on one of those like slingshots where they shoot you up into the
Mm-hmm.
sky. Like I said, I really I didn't take the job to try to become like the next on-camera person or a personality like that. But I am a team player. So if somebody's like, hey, this is what we need you to do today, we need you to shoot you into space on a rocket ship. I'm a team player. I'm gonna put my hand up and say, let's try to put on a show.
And we appreciate you doing that. I love the Ronnie Chang interview. To me, like I agreed with what Dan said of how it felt like, some of the things they'd done in the past of like just sinking into the awkwardness of the interview. Like I'd hope it didn't legitimately damage any relationship because Ronnie Chang is
No.
really fun. So would love to have him
The
back on the show.
the worst part about that, and I think I might have mentioned it. Dan knows me for the most part. He knows that I'm locked in on sports 24/7. For him to toss the question like, Taylor, what's your thoughts on the state of comedy? I, I've I've told like Mike Fuentes and Billy and Chris Cody, like I don't watch TV shows, I don't watch movies. A lot of the times they're talking about like some of the most popular movies, and I'm like, I don't really know that. But if you want to talk about, Barry Zito in the early 2000s on the Oakland A's or Jeremy Bonderman on the Tigers, like I could talk about that all day. But when you start to talk about some of the pop culture stuff, that's kind of where you lose me.
So speaking of other segments that didn't necessarily go as planned, Met or Jet was premiered today and possibly its first and final segment. How do you feel that went today?
It was kind of a where were you moment when like 5 years from now we'll be like, hey, remember the 20-second segment Met or Jet? It was a scenario where I came up with the idea. So I do want the credit for coming up with the idea. I told Mike Ryan, I told Chris Cody, I told Jeremy. Everybody loved the idea. Everybody was like, this is a perfect
Yeah,
idea.
I listening as a listener, I thought, all right, here we go. And again, you have the history of Stu not being able to recognize Francisco Lindor, right?
Exactly.
So I'm going into this, I'm thinking the same thing as you. Like, this is going to be great. He's not going to get any of these.
Exactly. So where I think the segment went wrong, one, love Dan. Love him. Love him for every opportunity he's ever given me. But he teased the segment way too early. And with somebody like Stu Gatz, with how slippery he is, you have to when you're trying to pin him into a corner, you can't tell him 2 hours before that
Yeah.
you're gonna try to pin him into a corner. You have to just get him right on the spot. So I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but he there was a long window for him to look up either the Mets or Jets rosters. And then if you notice, the only reason people know I did that segment is because the second it went wrong, Jeremy was the one who was like, thanks a lot, Taylor. So,
Yeah.
the segment started dying. Jeremy was like, hey, I want to wipe my hands clear. This was Taylor's idea. I gave Jeremy a list of very tough names in the beginning of like fringe Jets, fringe Mets. He took the list, rearranged it, and started with some of the easiest ones. And then I think what happened, if Stugatz didn't cheat, he got into a little groove. And again, it's a
Yeah.
50-50 guess. I think he got into a little groove. And a lot of those first couple of names were like, oh, Brett Beatty. That's the Mets starting third baseman. Where if you've ever seen one lineup for the Mets the past year, you most likely know DJ Reed, who's one of Pro Football Focus's highest graded cornerbacks,
Absolutely.
opposite
How could
Sauce
you not
Gardner.
know that? Yeah.
So I again, credit to me for taking the swings. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I feel like that's something I've learned from watching this show. Don't be afraid to take chances. Don't be afraid to let segments fail, but also maybe give me some better support.
Yeah. And you know what, Taylor? I think it can come back, and you you don't just hold Stu's feet to the fire, you hold Dan's feet to the fire, and it doesn't come back as Met or Jet. It comes back as Met, Jet, or Net.
Okay.
Hmm? It's
Uh,
Dan. The Mets,
yeah,
the Nets are really good, right? Dan
yeah.
Lebitard's favorite team, right?
That
How many
I
Nets
I
does he know?
I thought you were gonna go with, since Dan, the only baseball team Dan references him watching, the Tampa Bay Rays. I thought you were gonna go Ray or Nay.
Ray or Nay? I mean, yeah, that could be, but I trust Dan on his Tampa Bay Ray knowledge.
He's locked in.
He's locked in on that. I think
I
Met,
think
Jet, or
I think if
Net, you lower that down to a
yeah,
33% chance.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
if baseball has 162 games, Dan's watching at least 150 Tampa Bay games.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any Super Bowl takes that you didn't get to get out that you need to share?
Yeah, I think kickers have gotten way too good, and I don't think
Mm.
we talk about enough how easy the kicking has gotten. I It's almost like a back in my day, but kickers
I'm going to steal
it
that because we're actually in a competition with Greg Cody to see who can do more back in my days, Greg
yeah,
Cody or us. We're tied 4-4.
yeah. A
That's a good
50
one.
yard field goal, a 50-yard field goal used to have some significance, and I remember when I was growing up watching football in the early days, a 50-yard field goal felt like a moonshot. It felt like a 50-50 prayer whether your kicker could even get it to the end zone or not. But now you have these kickers for the Chiefs and the 49ers in that game, and I think it's Moody and Butker. They're kicking. I think Moody set the record with a 55-yard field goal, and then within like 2 minutes, Butker set the new record with 57. And
Hmm.
I think that's one of the most underreported things from the Super Bowl, that kickers have kind of gotten just way too good.
That's honest. I didn't expect a great take there, but that's legitimately a great take that I have not heard. Kicking has jumped the shark.
Yep.
It's that what could the league do to bring back the challenge?
Maybe when you're bringing them out, I do have a football background playing college football at North Carolina, so I do feel like I could sit in on a committee or board or some type of commissioner type role. I would take the kicker if one, I would probably just eliminate kicking just in general. You look at everybody in that sport, and then you look at the kicker, and they just don't look like they belong. But if we have to keep the kicker, you spin him around like
Yeah.
10 times. You spin him around 10 times after he takes his steps, and then he has to kick it there. And then we'll see. More teams would
Okay.
probably go for it on fourth down.
I like that's a good change. Do you think we're gonna miss football chains when they're gone?
Yeah. You need the chain gang. The chain gang is part of football.
Yeah, I mean the drama of stretching out the chain. I think even if like they have the chip, they're still gonna need to review that play because the chip isn't gonna tell you did the ball cross the line before a knee hit the ground, right?
Yep.
So that's why we have the chains to bring them out so we can have that time to watch the replay. What now we're just supposed to like
And we don't want technology to start taking over the game of football. You bring in this new technology, you eliminate the chain gang, you eliminate those three jobs that
yeah
those people
the
had.
job's lost.
exactly. You kind of have to. We're trying to build a better economy for the future of football, and the way to do it isn't by eliminating jobs and just having robots and all this technology.
Maybe another way to make kicking harder is kickers have to do like 100 calf raises
Yeah.
before they go. I mean, you're familiar with calf raises, having done 1,000 of them. Do you
Yeah.
think that would be a good grid of death punishment maybe for the show? Do a bunch of calf raises during the show? Then
No,
maybe.
no. I don't think it's a good grid of death punishment just because when I did it, I bought those like basketball trainers and I was like, this summer I'm gonna learn how to dunk. I was probably in like seventh or eighth grade, close
Mhm.
enough to where like I was probably this height still, like 5'9", 5'10", with basketball sneakers on, close enough to be like, you know what, if he gets his vertical up, like maybe he can. And it was like prime Nate Robinson. I was like, okay, like smaller people have kind of set the standard. I bought those black and red vertical shoes. I went on the stairs. I did 1,000 calf raises, and the next day I could not even get up out of bed. Like my calf muscle was locked, and I think I had to take like 2 days off from school. And it's when your mom has to call your school, and your excuse for missing school. She didn't even try to hide it. She wasn't like he's sick, he's that. She was like, yeah, he's got a calf muscle problem where he just fatigued his muscles to the point where he can't even walk.
Yeah, but maybe that'd be funny to see someone try to come into the show the next
I
day after
I
doing a
wouldn't wish
thousand
that
of
pain on
those.
I wouldn't wish that pain I felt on anybody.
But couldn't you see Tony being like, "Nah, I'm gonna do it." Like Taylor, you're just weak. Hmm.
I could see that, but again, I wouldn't. I know the pain that's waiting for him on the other side, and yeah, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Okay, okay. I mean, little magnanimous of you. Fuentes won't be looking out for you like you're looking out um, for others there. But my next question: at what point did you realize that you were a part of greatness in the Tony show? Was it when you threw your fourth interception or your fifth interception?
The t- I think I said this earlier. It was like a where were you moment. The Tony show
Mm-hmm.
was maybe the best example of like you had to be there, you had to be live in the chat. Um, when did I know it was great? The first moment that I laughed like very hard was Tony was doing the intro, and he was still in the intro. I think they started at like 6, and it's like 6:20, and I can notice that he keeps looking up at the clock. And as he's looking up at the clock, Dan calls me on the side and he was like, "Hey, how's it going? How's Tony doing?" And I just told Dan, I was like, "Dan, I think Tony's all out of material." and, and it was literally within 20 minutes. And originally Tony was like, "Hey, can you stay and help me fill up some time with the content?" And we really only planned to like play video games. And I think I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna stay from like 6 to 8:30, 6 to 9, 6 to 9:30 ish. Nothing crazy. Um, and then we got to like 11 p.m. and I was like, okay, because a little look at me, Louie. I go to the gym in the morning before I have to be at work the next day, and I have people I work out with there to keep myself accountable. So I was going to the gym the next morning at 6:30 no matter what. So now it's 11 o'clock and I'm like, okay, I should probably start to get out of here. And as I said that, Amin walked in, and Amin walked in and I was like, okay, you know what? I'll sit down for a little longer. And then we looked at the clock and it was like 2:30 and I was like, okay, now I'm just kind of committed. But yes, shout out to everybody that watched the Tony show and liked the Tony show, because I know a lot of people tweeted about how much they liked the Tony show afterwards, and that was something that Dan mentioned to us right away. The positive outpour that we got after that, and taking a creative chance like that to do something where, it's 4 or 5 people on camera for 14, 15 hours. They're doing
Yeah. They're
they're
the
doing
upcoming Oscars.
Oscars.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're doing the Oscars on Sunday, and they're asking people. They were trying to get a head count for who was going to be there, just in terms of just watching the Oscars from the kitchen in the studio, or from the sitting area in the studio. And one person was like, the Oscars kind of goes long, and this could turn into like a 6 or 7 hour stream. And me and Tony kind of laughed, like 6, 7 hours. Those are rookie numbers for the Tony Show. The Tony Show is just getting started about the 10th hour, and everybody kind of knows that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember exactly where I was when the Tony Show happened. I was at the hospital the day before my third child was born, staying up way too
Wow.
late watching the Tony Show, and I still haven't gotten a good night of sleep since. So,
Yeah. I think one of my favorite comments from the I think it was either the Tony Show comments on the YouTube or the reaction the next Friday when they talked about it. It
mhm.
was like, I'm not embarrassed to say I watched the Tony Show, but I'm embarrassed to say how much I love the Tony Show. And that was kind of like the overall vibe, where it was like, I really don't know why I'm watching 4 or 5 people just hanging out in a studio. But I think everybody did have a good time.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun, and just I did watch a lot of it. And I mean, for fans, one of the reasons it connects is it reminds people of freedom, like the 24-hour marathon. And so I think just your guys' willingness to do a stream like that long, stay up late, and just do something silly that people can watch, was a lot of fun. So I definitely enjoyed it a lot. But now we've got some things to mull over here. So I got to get my mulling things over files here.
Okay.
And right here, which way?
Thanks,
Things
all over.
things to mull over here. Do you think Tom Brady's done with football? I think he's.
Yeah,
I think he's not.
I I think he's pretty confident in his decision. I originally was on the I think he's going to go back to the Raiders, but now that even more time has kind of passed by, um, but I think the biggest question mark is that Patrick Mahomes keeps winning, and if Patrick Mahomes closes in on 6 or 7, I don't really remember how many he won. I grew up a Jets fan and kind of just tortured my entire life by Tom Brady. And by the time the playoffs happened, I kind of just tuned it out. But my gut says he's done.
Think about this. So here's a situation to mull over. Tom Brady's like, well, I think he's 47, turning 48 maybe. So 2 or 3 more years, he turns 50. Let's say in those 2 or 3 more years, whatever it is, Patrick Mahomes wins 2 more Super Bowls. They keep winning. They win 4 in a row. I think at age 50, Tom Brady comes back for at least one more season, just to show people that he can still ball at age 50. I mean, he's out here running the 40 faster than he did at his combine time. And I think he's going to, what if the first game of the season, Chiefs are slated to play like whoever, and Tom Brady is just like, you know what? Forget it. And he just gets out of the booth and he goes down onto the field and plays against Patrick Mahomes week 1 at age 50. Think about it.
Yeah, and I think it's a different question in my mind of, will he play, and could he play? Because I'm in the camp of, you never doubt Brady. If he's in between the numbers, I'm gonna take him, and I like his odds. But I think he's far enough removed where maybe that fire has kind of gone out.
Yeah. Something else to mull over here. Little Nick Mullins. Did he show you something
Okay.
this season?
No, he did
No,
not show.
not enough.
Not a single thing.
Not a
I would,
not a good backup career for you.
no. I'm a
So
Josh Dobbs guy.
stop. You're a Josh Dobbs guy. See,
Yeah,
I
the
you
passion one.
got you just experienced the peak Josh Dobbs experience. He's peaked, Taylor. That was my opinion. Josh Dobbs coming to the Minnesota Vikings, winning with no prep. That is the mountaintop of when that happened. I said, guess what? Because I'm a Titans fan. He was on the Titans. And I'm like, that's just the Josh Dobbs experience. He'll like get you close, but over time, he's going to come back down to earth. And what happened? He,
Yeah,
dude came back down to earth.
he he's in a similar scenario for me where Ed Orgeron for college football, great interim coach. If you fire a coach, I think interim Ed is one of your best options. He could always rally the troops to win you one game, but when he's in charge of the program for longer than one game, and he doesn't have talent like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, maybe not the best. Josh Dobbs is my interim Ed, where if you're telling me, hey, one game sample size, I'll take my chances with Josh Dobbs and Josh Dobbs being able to pull off the miracle. But yeah, I wouldn't want Josh Dobbs as my franchise quarterback.
Here's one last thought exercise. Kenny Pickett. Let's say he stays in the league 10 more seasons and he keeps averaging similar numbers over those 10 seasons. We'll say he averages throwing like 200 yards a game and like 20 touchdowns, 12 picks a season. 10 seasons of doing that, but he makes it to the Super Bowl 3 times. Wins 2 of them. One, just not the MVP, mediocre play, but in one of them, he totally balls out, has like a 4 touchdown game. Is Kenny Pickett a Hall of Famer?
No, he wears two gloves as a quarterback. I think the as a Hall of Fame voter, you kind of have to stand on something, and I don't think you could be putting two glove quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame. It's just a terrible look. Maybe if he shed one of the gloves, and that was kind of the reason for his Super Bowl MVP type performance, but I don't think the football player in me couldn't stomach the thought of voting somebody in that wore two gloves on a consistent basis.
I I'd have to agree with you. I'd go. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer either. Maybe if he got to one more Super Bowl and won it, then maybe you put him in. But not not enough for me either. As I mull that over. Do you think it's time for you to accidentally text Mac Brown who should replace him?
No,
No,
no.
not yet. Still,
I could probably come up with a list, but not not to text Mac Brown. Yeah.
no. What were you feeling when you accidentally texted Roy Williams your list of replacements?
Yeah, it was the worst moment of my life.
Ooh,
Uh it was one of those moments where it felt like a TV show or a movie where I realized what I did in the moment, and I just wanted to like
oh,
throw my phone. I wanted to throw my phone, pack a suitcase, move to Mexico and kind of start a new life. Um, but luckily, I've talked to some people in the basketball program, and they've kind of said that there's like a 90% chance that Roy Williams never even saw the message. So that's kind of what I'm banking on because he's never mentioned it since, and he's been nothing but nice to me.
yeah. So, I mean, I can't
And,
imagine what like.
and it would have been different if I was like, hey, this is who I want to replace Roy Williams because I think he should be fired. The whole like lead up to it was like, if Roy Williams retires, these are the coaches to replace him. And he was, I think, 71, 72 at the time. So it wasn't like crazy out of the question. And I kind of followed it up, texting him, and I was like, hey, coach, not saying you should retire, but was coming up with a list for a podcast and uh needed to try to make some content. So I try to smooth it over, but again, he never even responded to that.
So you did send like a little
Follow up.
apology, like follow up
Yep.
explanation
Yeah.
to that there. So if only Apple would roll out their updates faster so you could have just unsent
I would
that
have yeah, I would have
message
undone
so
that text so
fast
fast.
or edited it to create a list of Hall of Fame coaches, Roy Williams, number one.
Yeah. Yeah. That, that would have been a good idea.
So you've mentioned you're a man who's locked in on sports. Is there anything that you see that you want others to know about? Maybe about the Knicks or any of these other teams that you're passionate about. Give you a little platform to talk Knicks or UNC hoops.
Yeah, with the Knicks, I'm starting to get a bit worried about the injuries that have kind of mounted up. I think OG Anunoby should be back within the next couple of weeks, but the timeline with Julius Randle has gotten pretty vague. Jalen Brunson's been banged up. They kind of feel like a team that just needs to survive their way into the playoffs and try to hold on to like a 5 or 6 seed and then hope for an upset in that first round of the playoffs. And I think when healthy, they've kind of proven, especially the stretch when they first got OG Anunoby, that they could be a really good team that hangs their hat on the defensive end. And then with Carolina, I don't think there's really a dominant college basketball team this year where it's like Houston, but Houston kind of beats up on the little guys in college basketball. And when they do play a better ranked team, those are their close games. So their metrics kind of skew towards being this elite team. Purdue, I never trust Purdue in the tournament, even though they're going to have the National
Yeah.
Player of the Year
You
in
can't
Zach Edey.
never ever ever trust Purdue.
Yeah, so it kind of comes down to I think UConn. If I had a bet right now, UConn would be the betting favorite to win the NCAA championship. But if Carolina could get that fourth one seed or one of the top two seeds and kind of avoid UConn, which would probably be tough because they would probably try to pair those both in the East region and kind of maximize the fans that are going to go out there. But Carolina already played UConn this year, and I think that's it's just a team that they match up so poorly with. But they have Armando Bacot, they have Harrison Ingram, the transfer from Stanford, Cormac Ryan, the transfer from Notre Dame. Elliot Cadeau has been a great freshman point guard this year and helped distribute the ball. And then they're going to have the ACC Player of the Year in RJ Davis, who should probably be a first team All American pretty easily to get his jersey up in the rafters for UNC. So it's kind of one of those things where you just have to hope you're playing your best basketball when you're entering March. And Carolina plays Duke this Saturday for a chance to win the ACC outright, which is a pretty cool opportunity, assuming that Carolina beats Notre Dame tonight on Tuesday.
Yes or no? You want the Knicks to see the Heat in the playoffs.
Yes, it's I'm gonna play both sides here and do
Both
yes and no.
sides. Okay.
Yes and no. Yes, I want the Heat because of the content. I think Knicks Heat always fun. Get to go to games, um, get to and it's one of those situations where like when Carolina played Duke in the Final Four, I was like, oh, if Carolina wins, like that's great bragging rights. Like if you're going into an office every day with Heat fans and your team just beat them in the playoffs to advance, you get those bragging rights. But no, because I'm kind of in the Mike Schur camp of wanting to avoid the Heat at all costs possible. Um, I kind of had that moment a couple of nights ago when I was watching the Heat play, where I think it was when they were fighting with the Pelicans, and then they wound up winning that game, and like something in my gut was like, oh no, these guys, they're going back to the finals, aren't they?
Maybe that would be good content for the show. So here's our last question for you here, Taylor. Thank you for joining us. But this week on the show, Greg Cody had quite the take of his leaving the lid up take. And when he said it, I immediately thought of other bad kind of like takes or revelations on the show of like Stu's Chiefs take, Witty's Caesarian take, you know, Dan predicting the Lions, and other bad takes. So I'm wondering, Greg Cody's like, I don't need to put the lid down, like I'm empowering women by leaving it up take. Where would you give me like a top 5 or top 3 of like worst takes in show history, and where does that fall in?
Yeah, so I would kind of separate it in two categories where one, just a bad take. Flat out,
Yeah,
freezing cold,
terrible.
just
Yep.
just a bad take. The other way I would separate it, and that's where I think Greg's take goes into, where it's like I can't believe this take, and it's like a human operating at a subhuman level, where it was like that thought and the thought that kind of goes into that never even crosses my mind. So one would be Chris Cody with the shopping carts
Mm-hmm.
and just refusing to put them back, because anybody who's ever been to a Publix or wherever, it takes 20 seconds to
Yeah.
put your cart back and walk it back. You're really not inconveniencing anybody, and then sometimes you're backing out of a spot and a cart's in your way, and you're making the worker do extra work. They're not getting paid extra to kind of put your carts away, even though you can, somebody could say or try to justify it and be like that's in their job description. So that would be that for that part. And it's perfect that it was Chris Cody, because I don't know if you remember this or saw this, but there was a time where he was eating um, popcorn. Somebody sent us popcorn to the studio, and he
Yeah.
was eating it in the background. And he eats it, and as Jess is talking, he licks his fingers and puts it back, puts his hand back in without even thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes into that part where it's like that's just not
Yeah.
how people should act, and people should think when
The
you're in
apple
public
doesn't
sight.
fall too far
Yes.
from the tree, it appears.
That sounds like a person whose dad goes in the pool and showers and shampoos in the pool. Uh, and the other would be
Mm-hmm.
just the worst take. And the worst take in show history is Stu Gatz' Chiefs take, the I
Yeah.
dare you. There's just the tone he delivers it, the way he delivers it, the way he contradicts himself, where by the end he's saying that Andy Reid should have, not thrown out Alex Smith because he's so great, but by the end of the take, he's kind of already off that, saying Alex Smith not that good anyways. And you're like, I love the show. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and one of my favorite episodes is when Charlie's working in the mailroom and he's doing like the Pepe Sylvia, Pepe Sylvia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's where it's like trying to follow where that Stugatz take is going. There's just like strings and pictures everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like your head is bouncing like pong back and forth, trying to figure out where he's even trying to take this take. And by the time he lands the plane, you're just about even more confused than when you started. And I think Dan says it in the actual video where it's like absolutely breathtaking for
Yeah.
how many times you can
Mm-hmm.
contradict yourself in a minute span.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's my number one too, because even in the moment, like it was really good, and it's only gotten like infinitely better over time as Patrick
It
Mahomes has
it's
proven to
just gonna keep
be,
getting worse
yeah,
too.
who he is. So,
I think that's the other thing about it, where like Dan saying the Lions would make the playoffs and then they go winless. Like by next year, it's a new Lions team. Like that Lions team was winless, but by the time that's over, like you have a new team, new expectations, a new prediction. Every year that Patrick Mahomes is great, and every year that Patrick Mahomes wins a Super Bowl, you can kind of just run that take back and be like,
yeah.
wow, 7 Super Bowls later, and it sounds just as bad as the first day you heard it.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if people are playing that take decades from now on other
It
sports
might op- it,
shows.
it might open his Hall of Fame speech.
It could
where,
even
where
become
Patrick Mahomes is like, they're like Patrick Mahomes 40 years down the line is getting interviewed by like Sal Palantonio Jr. And he's like, what motivated you? And he's like, this one dumb sports show host in Miami. And they kind of just play that clip, and wherever Stu Gatz is, we'll be smiling.
Yep.
Heaven or hell. I don't know.
50-50. Met or jet.
It's awesome.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Taylor.
Thank you so much.